Welcome to our next video on Java. My name is Kishore. In this video, we will discuss about variables and data types. Why do we need variables in Java is in order to store the data. The variable represent a memory where you can store the data and you can manipulate the data in your program. Suppose you want to store some value 20 in X and value 30 in Y variable. Later, you want to add these two variables and store the result in Z. In that case, you need a memory to store these data. In order to represent that memory, we will be using variables. Then in Java, whenever you want to create variables, you need to mention the variable would be storing what type of data. For that reason, there is one more thing we are going to discuss called data types in Java, which is going to represent what kind of data a variable is going to store. In Java, there are around 8 data types, which are byte, short, int, long, float, double, char, and lastly boolean. These are various data types. Byte, short, int, long represent whole numbers. Float and double represent floating point numbers. If you want to represent a single character, you can use the char data type. Whenever you want to represent true or false kind of value, you can use boolean. You need to declare the variables using these data types and then you need to store the data. Coming to the size of each data type. In terms of bytes, byte take 1 byte, short takes 2 bytes, int takes 4 bytes, long takes 8 bytes, float takes 4 bytes, double takes 8 bytes, char takes 2 bytes, then boolean takes 1 byte. What this size is going to do for these data type is they are going to represent some range of values. If you create a variable of byte type, then it can represent certain range of values. Since 1 byte is equals to 8 bits, how you can calculate how much range of values a 1 byte can store is you can calculate something like this. 2 to the power 8 equals to 256. It means 256 range of numbers a byte can store, which includes positive value as well as negative value. It means you need to divide by 2 so that you get 128, means minus 128 to minus 1, then 0 to 127. So when you count this range, it is going to become 256. It means in 1 byte memory, you can represent 256 range of values. Similarly, for short also there will be some range. For int and long also there will be few ranges. As well as for float and double, there will be some range with fraction point values also. Coming to char, it takes 2 bytes because it represents not only ASCII code, it also can represent Unicode, like different characters of different countries, like Spanish language, Chinese language, and other types of language characters it can represent. As it is 2 bytes, it is going to be around 2 to the power 16. So 2 to the power 16 will be 65,536 range of characters a char can represent. And the boolean can represent true or false. Let us now see how to create these variables with the data types. So the syntax is something like this. The syntax to declare variable is you need to use the data type, the variable name equals to the value. Suppose I want to create a variable of type int. I can write int type, variable name is x and value is 25, something like that. Let us create the class to see the demo on variables and data types. I will create one class with the name called test variables and data types. Let me select main method. Well, we have created a class called test variables and data types. What we will do is we will create variables of different data types and we'll try to print those values. Later, we will see how to manipulate those variables. Firstly, I am creating one variable. Let's say I want to represent an age of a person whose age is 25. Then I will use the syntax type followed by the variable name and the value. And look at the name I have used is age. I am starting with lowercase because in Java, as per the coding standard, the variable names should begin with lowercase and it should follow the camel case. In case I want to represent employee ID, I would be using something like this, employee ID, so that I am starting with lowercase. Since there are more than one word in a variable name, I am using camel case. Let me print this value by using sysout. So I will write age equals plus age. Why did I use plus age is because I am concatenating this string with the expression age. As I want to print the age as it is and the value of the age, I am using age equals this plus age. So in Java, whenever you want to concatenate a string and some expression, you always use plus operator. Let me run this program. You can see age is 25. Similarly, I want to represent another variable char. Let's say this is gender. I will use single character. You have to use a single quote for single character. I am writing M means male and we will print this gender and let me run this program. I should see age and gender. Let us create another variable of fractional type, that is double. Assume we are representing a salary. In that case, I would write 45,000 dot some fractional value, something like this. And we can print that salary like this. We are concatenating the string with the variable salary. And if I run this program, I should be able to see that salary. But if you want to represent float variable, then suppose I am writing here something called price with something 500 or 600, some dot 89, something like this. The compiler will raise an error. Why the compiler raises an error is float takes 4 bytes. The moment you represent a fractional value, Java treats that fractional value as double data type. Because double size is 8 bytes, you cannot store 8 byte of data in 4 byte memory. For that reason, to represent the floating point numbers in Java, you have to use either capital F or lowercase f at the end of the number. So if I use capital F or lowercase f, then compiler is going to treat this number as floating point number and it won't be telling the compiler that it is going to occupy 8 byte memory. Let me print this value. Notice when I print this price, it doesn't print F, it only prints the value. It doesn't print F. F is only for the compiler to understand that this number is not a double type, it is a floating point number. So the next data type we will see is long. Long takes 8 bytes. Suppose I want to represent a 10-digit number or 15-digit number, then you can always use the long because its size is 8 bytes, which is going to be 64 bits. But the moment I represent some 10-digit number, notice the compiler raises an error. Why the compiler raises an error is, by default in Java, the whole numbers are treated as int. Since this number exceeds int range, it gives an error. If you look at the error closely, it says the literal of type int is out of range. But if you make it 9 digit, it won't be an error. But the moment you make 10 digit, it will be an error because int also has some range. So what is that int range? If you want to check the int range, because it is taking 4 bytes, it means 32 bits. So 2 to the power 32 is going to be this value, and we will divide by 2, and this much range of negative value and positive value. So 2147483 means I need to consider, let me put it in the comment. I need to consider from this range to -1 and 0 to 2147483 If I write this number like 2147483 it won't be an error. But if I write 48, it will be an error because it exceeds the integer range as it is positive value. The maximum positive value is this much. And also in Java, what you can do is if you want to represent a big number and you want to give some kind of commas, it won't be allowed. But you can always use underscores for numbers like this. This is just for better readability. You can represent like this. So coming back to the error which we were getting, how to avoid that error? Suppose I want to represent a big value, something like this. In that case, what I should do is I should use suffix L, capital L or lowercase l, so that this would not be treated as int. Instead, it will be treated as long data type. The long has a much higher range compared to the int. That's why it is supporting this particular value. So this phone number probably may not be a correct phone number, but what we are understanding is whenever you are representing the number in Java, you should understand for every number certain range will be there because of the type. Let us print this phone number and see how it prints. And you can observe that underscores won't be printed because the underscore is only for readability. Another data type we will use is Boolean. Suppose you want to represent a true or false kind of value, you can always use Boolean. Let's say I want to mention here is employed is true or false. A person is employed true or false, or a status true or false. You can always use the variable with some true or false value, and we will print this value also is employed value. You can use control space so that you would get this variable names. Let us run this program and see what is the value it prints for is employed. It is printing true. So we have seen a few data types. You can always check with other data types like byte, short, then anything else is missing. Okay, let us use byte. I wanted to show you something like byte. Say for example, this is byte B equals to 128. You can observe it is not compiling successfully because byte range is negative 128 to 0 and positive 1 to plus 127. If you give 127, the compiler will not raise any error. But if you give 128, the compiler raises an error because it exceeds the range. Well, we have seen few data types and the values we can store in these variables. In the next video, we will discuss the next topic. Thank you so much.